Aaron, what was your introduction to the world of musical theater?
Wow, I'm a kid that was born in the 80s, so I think probably the earliest is it musical theater or theater?
Musical theater.
Okay. Yeah, I was a kid who was born in the 80s, so probably the first musical theater that I saw was Disney movies in the early 90s. And then I grew up about an hour outside of New York City, so I was very fortunate that I got to come see Broadway shows in New York when I was a teenager, which I think had a big impact on me. I don't know if I really would have been exposed to seeing live theater without that. So I was very lucky that I grew up so close and came to school groups in my family, and I was exposed to a lot of theater as a kid.
And you originated the role of Gabe next to Normal, and then you took up the role of Frank Abagnale Jr. in the stage musical version of Catch Me If You Can. How is it different building a character from scratch as opposed to one that is based on a real person or associated with an iconic film performance?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely offer, I think, different challenges. Obviously, when you get to build something yourself from the ground up, you have a lot of impact and creative say over where the character goes, and at least even if it's a conversation with you and the director and the writers, you're very much a part of that, and it kind of ends up shaping based on your ability or lack of ability to kind of tailor fit to yourself. And then when you step into something that someone else has done, I guess I haven't really thought about it, but I've had the experience, whether it's Grease Live, I mean John Travolta's performance is so iconic, or Ewan McGregor's performance in the Moulin Rouge movie, or Leo DiCaprio's performance in Catch Me If You Can. I've never shied away from watching their performance. I had an acting teacher once who told me, if you have a Shakespeare monologue, go find tape of the greats doing that Shakespeare monologue. You're only going to learn things from it, and it's going to inform your performance. But because you're your own person, it's going to be different. So I've never, I think some people say, oh no, I don't want to watch it. I've never shied away from watching it because their performances are amazing. So it's just, it's very different doing each of them, but I guess, I didn't realize how many I've had to kind of redo, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And they say there's nothing like performing on Broadway. Can you try and explain what it's like to work on a long-running show like Moulin Rouge the musical?
It's kind of like nothing else. It's obviously there's so much work that goes in before you even get to Broadway. All the shows you see have been in development for years and years, and in out-of-town tryouts and small readings and workshops. But actually being in the run on Broadway, it becomes almost like an act of conditioning because you have to do 8 shows a week, and it's much different than shooting a television show or shooting a movie where it's kind of one and done. You have to do the same thing every night, and a big part of your job is just getting yourself recovered from the night before, healthy enough to be back on stage. So that sounds mundane, but I think it's the great part of being in the theater is that you kind of feel like you're in this company of athletes getting through this thing every night and still putting on the same really, really high level of production.
And because you're doing it each night, how do you keep it fresh and challenging for yourself as an artist?
Yeah, that's it's like an acting class 101 thing that your teachers say, you have to treat it as if it's the first night every night. And obviously that's easier some nights and harder other nights because as fun and as wonderful and and fulfilling as the job is, there are definitely days where you're tired or things are happening in your life, but you have to put that aside. And I just always try to think that, the audience has never seen this before, and there's going to be somebody in that audience that is going to be touched or moved by a performance, or they've saved up so much money to see the show, they've traveled from anywhere to see the show, and so anytime I'm feeling a little bit tired or sluggish, I just really try to think about those people and remember when I was that person going to see the show. So.
You've also worked on a number of film and television shows during your career. How does that sort of creativity compare to live theater?
Yeah, it's very fascinating. Kind of after a number of years of being very fortunate to go back and forth between stage and film and television. The stage show I'm doing now is the first show that I've been in on Broadway in about 8 or 9 years. So I was really focused kind of on the other side of things. But I find them equally fascinating. They're vastly different. As I said before, theater is really about every single night doing the same thing, keeping it fresh. I love working in television. I feel like television, especially if you're on a show for a long time, you get to really change with a character. Like these characters are gonna, it's not just the same story every night, they're gonna go on a journey and the character is gonna change and you get to really be a part of that. And then film is actually a little bit more like theater because it's one script, even though you just kind of go through it once, it's just one story you're telling. So you kind of craft it in a very similar way that you would play or a musical. But no, I find them all very different and I'm very glad that I've been able to kind of walk back and forth.
In October of last year, it was announced that you were cast in the role of Danny Bailey in an Apple TV Plus musical comedy series called Schnegedue. I understand it parodies the famous musical Brigadoon and pays homage to classic musicals. Can you tell me a bit about that role?
Yeah, Schnegedue, it links to Brigadoon in the way that, the story of Brigadoon is there's this magical town that appears and disappears. But Schnegedue, Cecily and Keegan's character, who are Cecily Strong and Keegan Michael Key, they find themselves lost in the woods and they come across a town. And in this town, when they get there, everyone in the town is in an old classic MGM musical. And all the people in the town don't know they're musical. So it's these two very contemporary sarcastic comics against these people that have no sarcasm, all earnestness. But yeah, it really pays tribute and is really a love letter to all these amazing musicals that you would have seen, shot by the studio system in the 50s and 60s. And I get to play Danny Bailey, who's very much the town bad boy. I'm very much the Billy Bigelow of the town, so I'm kind of getting to live all of my carousel dreams throughout the show. And it was so much fun to do. And we shot it last fall, and I never thought that it would be airing before Broadway came back. So now I think it's even more important that we're, sharing this musical story at a time where it's, the people that love musicals are kind of starved for that content. So I'm very excited that it's coming out now when it is.
And you're also starring in the upcoming season of Ryan Murphy's anthology series, American Horror Stories. That's a very different sort of show. What was that experience like, and tell us what it was like to collaborate with Ryan Murphy?
Yeah, it's very, very different. I kind of was going this way with Schnegedue, and then I got to go completely the opposite direction with American Horror Stories. I've been a huge fan of Ryan's for such a long time. Our paths have crossed a couple times, but it never really worked out for us to work together. So the fact that it finally happened with this is amazing. And in my story, I got to work with also friends of mine, and Gavin Creel and Matt Bomer, which was amazing. And yeah, I've never done any kind of horror, so to get to really step into the horror genre was a tremendous amount of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And you mentioned that Broadway still is not back yet.
Yes.
But what is the first thing you're going to do when you return to Broadway in September when Moulin Rouge the musical reopens?
I think, we start rehearsal in mid-August and the show will be back in September. And the first thing I'm going to do, I guess do the show. Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see my company and the creative team. And, we worked, for Moulin Rouge specifically, we worked for about 3 years before the show got to Broadway. So it's a lot of time and effort put in. And so I can't wait to see them, and I can't wait to see the audience and the audience response and all the shows. All the shows that are on Broadway, there's such a community with your friends that are in other shows that, all of that has just been gone for a long time. So I look forward to seeing everyone.
What is the next challenge you would like to take on, creatively speaking?
I think the next thing I would like to take on, I would like to, I'd like to direct one day. I've always kind of wanted to direct television. I recently have been thinking about maybe directing theater, which I never really thought about before. So yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one to bite off. But yeah, maybe down the road I'll try to throw my directing